Okay.
I'm actually going to jump off for just a sec. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Lindsay's gone. Now what are we going to do?
Is Gail in yet, or is she just waiting? That's one of my moms.
I'm here.
Hi, Gail. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm so glad that you can come to this.
Oh yes, I have like 10 other things I'm doing, but I want to keep you guys. I want to listen mostly.
But I love that. I love the 10 other things. That's how it should be. You should be multitasking at the same time. So
45 minutes of nap time for the baby. So.
Oh, good.
It's important, and I need all the advice I can get. So I'm excited to hear you guys.
I'm super thrilled that you're here. And it's been such a gorgeous day out too. Like the weather has been so amazing, right?
Yes, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, really fun. Good to get the kids out.
Yes. So I'm just going to mute myself. And
mute away. Yeah. I'll talk to you soon. Pipe in anytime you want.
Okay.
Oh, I love seeing people chime in. It's so fun seeing all the names start to roll in. Mark, have you been out on your bike much, Mark?
A little bit. I went. My birthday was last week, and I went for a nice bike ride in the pouring cold rain, but it was still a ride, which is good.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's really important. And dads need to take care of themselves too, right?
I'm not sure everyone agrees with that.
I agree with that. Do you think how do you think, while we're waiting for other people to come in, how do you think you do with self-care? Do you make a point of it? Do you schedule it? Or is it just sort of like, hey, I've got a few minutes, maybe I'll get out and do something?
I ride every Wednesday night and every year on my birthday. And,
every Wednesday night? That's great. Once a week.
Yeah. And then lately, the girls have been doing a volleyball camp up in New Haven. And so I take them up, and there's a place to hike right next door, and it's fantastic. I'll take the dog. We go for 2 hours. It's pretty awesome.
That is fantastic. It's so important. I think that's the problem, is that we talk about it, but we don't always actually, make a schedule. So I'm glad it's a schedule and something that you really do. That's fantastic.
Yeah, if it's not a schedule, it doesn't happen. And the Wednesday night thing is good because it's a bunch of friends of mine that I've been doing it for 20 years with. So it happens most every Wednesday.
That's really great. How far do you go? Like a couple miles or?
Yeah, it's a couple hours. It's usually between 6 to 10 miles on a mountain bike, which feels like 30.
Wow.
All right. Well, let's see. We've got about 11 people here on. I think we'll wait maybe a couple minutes for people to settle in. But I do want to acknowledge to everyone out there that we are live, and we have Lindsay Blass and Rebecca Strang presenting today. Pandemic Parenting, some advice to all of us, much needed advice on how to cope with the current situation. I'm going to give people another maybe 3 minutes to join us. So feel free to chat amongst ourselves here. If anyone has any pre-presentation questions, you feel free to pipe up. Let's say we're going to start at 10:05 on the nose. So that's 3 minutes from now.
Okay.
And I'm glad, Ruby, you got that link I sent you. Glad that went through. Good.
Hi, Ruby. It's fun to see all these names coming up on the screen.
I know.
I love it. Love having you guys.
It's funny because usually like live you have faces with no names, and now we have like all these names.
Yeah.
And some faces.
Well, Lindsay, while you were out of the picture for a minute, one of our moms was saying she was going to be multitasking, so she would be.
Oh, good. Well, you're in good company.
But she's also like rocking the baby and maybe doing a little laundry.
Yeah.
So it's totally.
I can speak about the morning that I had.
Yes.
Multitasking, because I was getting ready for this and drawing a turkey for my 8-year-old for his virtual art class before he goes to school this afternoon. So it was not on the docket, but at least I got to tap into my right hemisphere art skills.
There you go. And Linz, did you do like the old-fashioned thing I remember doing when I was a kid? Like draw
A
the
hand.
Is
No,
that
this was like, this was a high-tech turkey.
this is a more
It was-
sophisticated turkey?
Yeah, I was like, because it wouldn't print. Hey, Melissa. Yeah, it wouldn't print. So
I gotta
I got to draw it because the printer wouldn't work. So yeah, it was a fun morning.
Nice.
And
Well,
then my 5-year-old ran outside when he's supposed to be doing his schoolwork. And he ran out to play with the neighbor because it's, you know, beautiful out, 61 degrees on November 10th. I'll take it. So then I had to chase him down to come back in for his virtual class. So
wow. And then what were you doing to take care of yourself during all of this?
oh, well, well, the added layer for those of you who are here is that I am also 36 hours post emergency surgery. I'm fine. Everything is well. But I'm still recovering. So, yeah, it's been, you know, just an added layer of like 2020 chaos. So I feel like I'm really exemplary of what we're going to be talking about today.
And but isn't it true that like when all this went down for you on Sunday night, you had a plan, like you have people, right? You were able to call your parents and like various people who could step in.
Yes. The village is
your
amazing.
village, right. So I wonder what would happen if you didn't have that village in place. What would you, can you imagine like going to the ER on Sunday night with your, you know, your kids and your husband because there was no other option?
Right. That would have been absolutely horrible. And I know situations where people have had to do that. I guess the kind of paradoxical upside in that regard to COVID is that only the patient is allowed into the ER. So I basically was dropped off and that was it.
Good and bad, right? What was that like to go through the whole experience completely on your own?
Well, it actually was fine, you know, and I think part of it was because this is a repeat occurrence for me. So it was just a situation that I had to get through and I knew what to expect and what to say and what to do. So I had that in my favor. If it was my first time, I think it would have been much scarier to not have that kind of support. But yeah, it was, that was actually surprisingly okay. And hopefully this is not a scenario that any of the people that we're talking with have to go through at any point, especially during COVID, because it's, I mean, it's not fun under wonderful circumstances. So.
Well, we're glad that you're here with us. So everyone, welcome to Sasko River Center's Pandemic Parenting with Dr. Lindsay Blass and Rebecca Strang. I'm Mark Maydeek. I'm head of marketing, or I'm something with marketing communications at Sasko River. I'm going to allow screen share for Lindsay to share her computer with the PowerPoint. And at the end, we'll have some questions and answers. And along the way, the chat box will be open. I'll try to monitor that if anyone has any questions that we can either answer along the way or answer at the end. And we'll allow a few minutes for that. Without further ado, Lindsay, take it away.
Thank you, Mark. I just have a question. Can I do the poll while the PowerPoint is being shared?
I believe so.
Okay. So I will start to share the, pardon my slow processing speed on getting the screen share up. Here we go.
Also, while she's doing that, we really do seriously ask you to don't hesitate as if you have a question along the way. We love jump in, and we really want it to be very much a conversation and less of a, you know, slide to slide to slide. So don't hesitate to let us know if you have something you want to hear about or you want an answer to, and specifics are fine too.
Yes, absolutely. But I am not technically savvy enough to figure out how to do the poll now. So I'm going to stop the share and we'll start with our poll.
Well, Lindsay, actually, that was with the third slide, I think. So if you want, I can launch the poll if that's. if you prefer.
It doesn't matter. We can just,
We can roll with the beginning, and then when we get to that page where the poll happens, we'll launch the poll.
All right.
Great.
Sounds good.
Let's do that. Yeah, so we're talking about pondering the possibilities, and then we added in impossibilities of pandemic parenting. And look, people, we've all been parenting for a really long time. It's not like that part's new. It's just that obviously adding in the pandemic is a whole new layer. So that's why we wanted to talk about how impossible and possible parenting still is during this time.
Right. So today we're basically going to be offering a lot of validation, and I think my experience over the weekend kind of, provided sort of taken on another level, but provided a little bit of that. Some commiseration. I have plenty of that for all of you. And, some inspiration. So, things that we can do to, just help us get through this time together. And, it seems like, hopefully we're not in it for as long of a haul, but it's been a long haul, and, there's not really an end in sight, at least definitively. So that is a little overwhelming. So what can we do to help us, make it through those times? And of course, we are very happy to answer any questions that come up. Feel free to jump in, as Rebecca said. We really like this to be interactive. So jump in whenever you feel you have a question or a concern, or you just want to complain about something, because we've all been there. So, all right. So now I'm going to stop the screen share, and we're going to do a little interactive poll. All right. So take a few minutes. Is that showing up as options? Okay, good. And let's see how everyone's doing.
Yeah. So you kind of get the gist of it. Super, everything's great. I'm sustaining, just kind of hanging in there. I'm sad, which also refers to seasonal affective disorder. So some people in the, this time of year and in the winter kind of get a little bit more sad and depressed because of the lack of light and the darkness. Snafu is situation normal, all fouled up. And then SOS, like, oh my gosh, I can't do another day of this. And this is an anonymous poll, so we're not seeing who is answering what. Yeah. But let us know. This is a kind of what we were a little bit thinking, right, Lindsay, as it's starting to show up.
Right. And when we were putting this together, we added in the seasonal affective stuff, because this is the time of year when those kinds of, the days are shorter, the weather is supposed to be getting colder, and living in this area this time of year can really, cause ourselves to experience some just sadness that comes with the changing of the seasons. And I think the fact that we've had this string of 70+ degree beautiful sunny days where people have been at the beach has been a most unexpected and most welcome gift for a lot of us. Myself probably at the top of the list for that. So it seems like most of us are sustaining. Yeah, well, we're going to talk about that. Some people are experiencing, some of that feeling of sadness, and, that's completely understandable and relatable. And a couple of us are feeling, like this is beyond where we want to be and how we want to be feeling. And, we are hanging by a thread that is slowly fraying, So, yeah, I think we've all had those moments. Absolutely. So.
Lindsay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for the, I think that you can see, everyone needs that. Just simple talk. I just, want to know, for this session, are you going to, do any touch base on the, the conflict, for the couple because of the kids, because kids home and they add stress to the relationship between couples, like, mine and my husband.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, Rebecca, do you want to?
Yeah, we're definitely going to be talking about that. I can tell you that without question, that is a very key component for all of this. And in a few slides, we're going to talk a little bit more about sort of mother load. But that's a big piece of it. And suddenly our husbands are home, or our spouses, or, your partners, or the dads are more involved or less involved, more put upon, out of their element. And you'll see in a few slides when we talk about how the majority of the mothers are actually the ones who are really carrying this mother load of responsibility. And yes, it definitely puts a strain on couples. We are here to answer specific ideas and questions that you might have, but also to talk broadly. So there'll be opportunity to connect in both ways.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
So the word for 2020, unsustainable. And yet, here we are, sustaining, and I think our poll was quite indicative of that.
Yeah.
We have no choice. These are the cards that we're dealt right now, and we're all just pushing through.
Lindsay, can you talk about that picture up at the top?
So the picture on the top right is actually my home. I took this photo in a moment of total exasperation and said, this photo just feels so exemplary of what we're going through. This is our dining room, which has been taken over as a makeshift office. I don't know if you can see, there's a Lego T-Rex in the middle of the table. There's a 5-year-old boy on the table putting together some other Legos. The 8-year-old is looking like he's working diligently. I can assure you he probably was not. We have art supplies here. There's my laptop, which is sitting on numerous files, and then the kids' 2 Chromebooks are somewhere in that mess. So I ended up posting this on social media, and I said, 2020 as exemplified by dining room tables. And I was hoping that people would submit their own photos of their dining room tables, and some people did, and it was really interesting to see just everybody's, like our lives have been taken over by this, and we're really just trying to sustain ourselves. So I don't know if other people can relate to that sort of image, or the one on the bottom left, which is, admittedly a stock photo, but, I think that's, pretty much what a lot of us are dealing with right now. If you have young kids.
Where do you put the kids while they're working on their stuff and they need to sign in, but at the same time you have to get your work done, and maybe you're still working at home, and maybe your husband's working at home, and he's saying, hey, you deal with the kids, I got an important call, and you're saying, I have an important call too. And we're used to, if you're both working parents working outside of the home, then you're used to having that freedom, and now you don't. You have to also be the school teacher and the parent, and you have to be the one that makes sure everybody is getting stuff done. And it's very easy to just kind of say, oh, I can't do it. And yet somehow we get up every day and we start over, and we get back at it. And so that's what I think we meant by this slide, is that this is unsustainable. I can't do my job full time and be the teacher and be a mom and deal with the, getting them outside and go chase after my 5-year-old who went to the neighbor's house because it's nice outside and I have to do this presentation in 5 minutes. How do you do it all? And somehow you just find a way to make it sustainable, and just okay, I guess we're doing it. It's interesting. I heard this recently and I thought it was so great. The quote is, a yard is hard, but an inch is a cinch. And I thought, what a great way to look at it. If we go, oh, but I have to have all these, he has to be there doing his thing. He and she has to do this, and I have to make sure my husband's happy, and I have to get my snack, and oh, by the way, I haven't had anything to eat today, and the neighbor's calling, and someone's at the door, and now the dog's freaking out. Like, if you try to make it all perfect without, within the framework of a long period of time, it's really hard. But if you try and go, I'm going to go inch by inch, I'm going to go day by day, moment by moment, and make the most of every moment, then it's a little bit more sustainable, a little bit easier to handle. But you have to convince yourself that that's okay, and that's the hard part.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get to more of this, but I think the bottom line, I think a lot, is just that we really need to show ourselves a ton of grace right now. And I personally have been amazed at how flexible and accommodating the people that I've had to interact with regarding myself, regarding my kids, regarding any circumstance that I've been in. Everybody has been so understanding. So when you have a situation like the photo on the bottom left, like let's assume that woman is on a Zoom call and her son comes in dressed up like a rock star and is singing to her. It's probably, we can talk about that video that went viral a few years ago of that, I can't remember what he was, but he was, some very high level, I think maybe an ambassador or something. And his daughter came strutting in to the video conference, and, and it went viral because it was so unusual and so endearing and so whimsical and fun and, and surprising, because, oh my goodness, this moment of like total unprofessionalism. And this is what we're living with now pretty consistently. So it's become the norm.
And it should be, even though it's not, it really should be an even Steven problem for both parents. Do you know what I mean? Like, why should, for example, let's say it's the mom, why should the mom get like no interruptions and have a perfect Zoom call with her boss, and the dad have the kids like running around? Or why should, how about the other way around? So that's the hard thing, is trying to figure out how to make it sustainable for both husband and wife, or both spouses. And I think sometimes it works better if it's sort of like a shared experience, like, hey, look, Monday, Wednesday, you got to take control, and Tuesday, Thursday, I'll take control. And that way it's even Steven, it's more split. But that is a whole new way of looking at things for couples and parents, for sure.
Hi, Rebecca. Can I just quickly share my experience?
Sure.
Yeah, so we have two girls. The younger one is 7-year-old, and last year, she said, back to back with me. We're like colleagues. So I had to help her with a lot of things. But then I realized, my husband thought she could just do everything by herself. I was like, are you kidding me? Because they don't, we kept my husband, to a quieter corner at home, because, he has, more important jobs than me. But I didn't realize, because I thought he would appreciate that, but that's not the case. So I just don't know how to make men realize, the sacrifice, other people did.
Yeah, and that's something, Mia, that I'm happy to follow up with you in greater detail. There are definitely ways to go about that and to make it more shared, more of a shared experience and a shared responsibility. It does take some time and some education, but that's something that we can definitely offer you and talk to you about. So thank you for sharing that, and I'm going to hold it in our pocket so that we can keep getting through the rest of the presentation, but I'll definitely revisit that with you. If not right now, then certainly as a follow-up.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
So just some statistics that kind of show that, this has been a really challenging time. So 40% of US adults that were surveyed reported struggling with mental health or substance use. This is June of 2020. So this was the peak of the shutdown. This was really when everybody was, wondering, when is life going to get back to normal? We've been doing this. We thought we'd be doing it for 2 weeks. maybe 3. And here we are now. It's what, 8 months, 9 months that we've been in this. So by June, you know, there was no end in sight, and we all know how the numbers have looked. So to me, that's not very surprising that there's an increase in mental health or substance use. 31% reporting anxiety symptoms. And I can say that, you know, there's been a real uptick just anecdotally in referrals for anxiety.
Lindsay,
Yes.
can I ask you a question on that? On that 40%, what's the normal number for that? Like non-pandemic?
You know, I'd have to look it up, but it's definitely much higher. I apologize that I don't have that. I can see if I can find it before the end of the presentation, because it would be interesting to compare. But you can see the uptick in anxiety is, you know, it's 3 times what it was a year prior. So there seems to be, you know, a pretty direct correlation.
Right.
26% were reporting trauma-related symptoms. And, you know, I think that's something that we may not be ready to or able to acknowledge now, but this is a really traumatizing time. And I think, you know, we probably will look back on this time, because there will be a time that we will be able to look back, which is keeping me going, the idea of that. But this is a very, you know, it's a very unsettled time. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know when life will really go back to pre-March 13th, when COVID was declared a pandemic. So, you know, this is the symptoms that many of us are experiencing are highly correlated with trauma response. So, you know, there's something to be said for just acknowledging that, like, this is really challenging and really hard. And, you know, it's okay if you're still feeling the effects of this for longer than you feel you should. And 13% started or increased substance use. So, you know, we can talk about, you know, just in terms of people seeking, and this would not fall under the umbrella of substance use, but there has been an increase in referrals for antidepressants among psychiatrists and for anti-anxiety medication during this time, because it really does feel just, it's very overwhelming. So, you know, people will be inclined to self-medicate if they feel that's going to help take the edge off. So that's where you're seeing that increase in substance use. And the, you know, what we would call as clinicians suicidal ideation. So that idea of, you know, I can't do this. There's no end in sight. You know, we should just, I can't go on any longer this way. So that has obviously increased since 2 years prior. So, and how are our kids doing? Well, there was a survey of children and adolescents. This survey was actually conducted in China, which is, you know, where the virus originated. So they surveyed children and adolescents aged 7 to 18, and they administered a depression scale, an anxiety scale, and a coping style scale. So the results showed that, you know, a little more than 22% indicated depressive symptoms, which is up from 13.2%. Anxiety was higher overall, especially for those who had a family member with COVID. So that makes sense. You're going to be a little more worried if this is more directly affecting you. And this was interesting. So people who had more knowledge and more understanding of ways to control the virus and to keep themselves healthy and take those proactive preventive measures were less likely to report feelings of depression or anxiety. So I think there's something to be said for feeling as though you have some control in the situation, as helping decrease those feelings and those symptoms. So, commiseration. We are all in this together, and we are all dealing with this. Rebecca, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, how much more do you guys think that you can take, right? That's the first question. Like, Really? How long is this going to go on? I want to sort of reference all of the statistics because we're hot wired, a lot of us, to especially in Fairfield County, to succeed and like not to have any kind of gee, if I have to ask for help or ask for medication or something, does that make me a weaker person? But I'm just here to say, like, if you imagine like you were sitting in your kitchen making a cup of coffee and an airplane crashed in your backyard, you would be like, wow, that's like really traumatizing. And you would say, hey doc, can you help me out? Like, I had to rescue this one and rescue that one. And everybody would say, of course you're upset about that. Of course you should get the help that you need. But with a pandemic, we're like, oh no, we should be able to handle this. Like
everybody else seems okay. I should be too.
Right. I should still be able to juggle all of these balls and, oh, all right. And sometimes I feel like the universe or whatever you believe in is saying, excuse me,
right.
It's okay that you need to ask for some help. So, I mean, we all have to agree this is really hard. It's just, this is really, really hard what we're dealing with. And it's okay to say that it's hard. And anybody who wants to get into a competition over how well you're doing versus somebody else, this isn't a soccer team competition. This isn't my kid got into this school and yours didn't kind of thing, or I'm going to get ahead. This everybody is going through this. And if we can just say, this is hard and I'm okay with it being hard and I need help for it. That's the first step, because always the first thing is awareness. Right? So if you're willing to say, I'm aware of how hard this is, and I'm aware that I need help and I can't do all of this on my own, you are on the path. You're on the right path. If you say, well, this is not so bad, I mean, it's also true that you can find a way for it to not be so bad, but you got to start with admitting it's hard. And so this is when we were talking about earlier, the mental load. And what mamas, in particular mamas, but a lot of us experience this, but we'll just move on to that next slide, Lindsay. And
sure.
The mental load is a term for the invisible labor involved in managing a household and family, which typically falls on women's shoulders. That doesn't mean it doesn't fall on dads, or whatever division of labor or whatever your partnership situation is. It's just that it typically falls on women's shoulders, and sometimes it's referred to as the worry work or as cognitive labor. The mental load is about not the physical tasks, but rather the overseeing of these tasks. So it's being the one in charge of having the never-ending list of to-do items that's constantly running in your head, or remembering what needs to get done and when, delegating all the tasks to respective family members who may or may not want to participate, and then making sure that it actually all gets done. Like, oh, my kid's sick, I got a call from school, I got to go pick him up, but I got a Zoom call with my boss in 5 minutes that's going to determine whether or not I'm going to keep my job. So, gee, do I ask my husband? Do I call my mom? Do I ask the neighbor? Is there a friend? But gee, I know that my little guy is going to be upset if I'm not the one that picks him up. So like, that's mental load. You're thinking through all of that.
And this is also stuff that, I think this term has been around for probably not very long, but certainly pre-pandemic. And I think, mothers and women typically, have this list of tasks going on in their heads constantly that dads don't. So it has to do with, the making sure the homework is done and making sure all of the materials that need to go to school are in the backpack for the next day, and making sure that the doctor appointments are made and kept and reminded about, and making sure that all of those little moving parts, and making sure that we know what we're going to have for dinner every night, and making sure that, does Johnny have clean underwear for the week? I better make sure his laundry is done. So there's just this running list of things that women have had to manage You know, and that's just by virtue of the history of our society in a lot of ways. And I think what's happening now is that, you know, what we talked about, we've touched upon it a little bit earlier, was this idea that, you know, dads are working out of the house now. And the expectation is, well, I'm moving my office to my house, but everything else is going to be the same.
Right.
And that's not the case necessarily, because now we do have, you know, kids home and kids who are needing that guidance and that support. And maybe both parents were working outside the home and are now both home. So it's a different shift, but the mental load of having to maintain and sustain the household traditionally falls on women. And this is not universal, but traditionally it's fallen more on the moms. So I don't know if, you know, if the moms who are here can relate to this, or if this feels like, you know, this is touching on something for you or striking a nerve. But, you know, just be aware that this is a common phenomenon. And, you know, it's funny. I actually asked my husband a few weeks ago, do you know what the mental load is? And he said, I've never heard that term before. And I thought, well, case in point. So, you know, so that's just our way of saying, we get it.
And it's important to just be, again, going back to that idea of awareness, just be aware of it. Like some of it we're hot wired for. We're just going to be thinking of everything all the time anyway. Even if we can sort of have more of a shared experience with the spouse, it's difficult for us to say, oh, I don't have to think about whether or not he's picking up Billy because he said he'd pick up Billy and I'm not going to think about it, you know? And actually, you know, you're still going to be thinking about it. And so somewhere there's a, you know, you try to have just awareness of it and say, look, I'm overthinking, or I'm getting bogged down by this. And the thing is, where can you find joy in that? Where can you say, wow, that look at me, how amazing I am that I can think of all of these things at once and still have my boss meet with me and still, you know, do my job and still figure out how to, like, when we flip that thinking and say we are pretty extraordinary beings and that we can make all this happen is really fantastic. And we want to try and remember that. At the same time, don't be a victim of it. You know, find a way out as well when it's too much.
Right.
You know, if I can add something as perhaps the only man on this call.
Thank you, Dad.
You know, I
we don't mean to man bash.
Yeah,
well,
but you are, Dad.
I read this, you know, when I was editing the presentation, and I got a little offended because I'm a very involved father. I don't think you'll find somebody much more involved than I. And I sort of say that proudly, but at the same time, what I don't say proudly is that really the dinner every night is something Melissa figures out. I can't deal with it. I can't, if it were up to me, we'd be eating mac and cheese every single night. So she, even though I help with dinner, I'll get the food, I'll do all those tasks, but this very, very much rings true to me in the sense that I just can't deal with figuring dinner out. If that makes, it does make sense.
No, that's a great addition, Mark. I'm really glad that you're bringing it up because, again, you're not hot wired to think about it that way. I mean, you are a really committed dad. You've got 6 kids. You know, you guys are both working. You know, you do a lot. So it totally, I think you're very dedicated. I just think that it doesn't necessarily then also automatically come to you that, oh, I'm also going to worry about this and I'm also going to do that. It's like, so some of it is just like, we're just hot wired to think in this way. And not all dads are like you. So
I just want to say, I'm with you, Mark. I rely on my husband to make the dinner. But that said, I have to ask for what I want. And it took me a long time to learn that. It's just never going to always be on his mind like it is on mine. And that's not a bad thing. And it's actually changed because now that he's taken it on, because he's home, he has taken it on. And one thing that, and this, Mark, I'm sorry to use your name as my example, but I think it's very interesting when I hear a very involved dad. I don't ever hear a very involved mom. It's just, it does not, it's like the vocabulary is so different.
Well,
It's a really
I'm
interesting
sorry.
point.
And I don't mean that about you. I'm just saying it just struck a nerve when you said
Right.
it.
Well, I'll tell you, I unfortunately do know very uninvolved moms. So
Yeah.
I do,
Yeah.
and that's.
Well, we all do, but I'm just saying it's not.
But the default is involved mom.
Fair
You
enough.
don't think of the expectation is that, well, mom's going to be involved because she's the mom.
Right.
So
this was not set against you, Mark. You made me think of it when you said that. So.
And I think it's important to think about this term, and I want to move on, but I think it's important to think about this concept historically because 50 years ago, 60 years ago, dads were traditionally the ones going out and supporting the family with their jobs, and the mothers were the household managers. And so now there's been a shift, a societal shift where a lot more mothers are working. I mean, before the pandemic, they were outside the home, but the shift, so that's been an appropriate shift and an accepted shift in our culture and society. But there has not been the same shift to the same degree among dads and men to take on the household responsibilities in the same way. And that's why we're dealing with this concept of the mental load. So, and I think there is a trend toward more egalitarian, roles, but I think, the women are just holding on to more.
And I just to tap it off, just the idea of for a woman to say, look, when we could both be outside of the house working at our jobs and our kids were in school, then, we had our balance, we figured it out. But now we are in a new situation. So I've had to shift my expectations and my responsibilities. And I'm asking you as a co-parent to also shift yours. It's going to be hard for both of us, but we have to come to an agreement together. I'm still going to have my mother load, but at the same time, I expect you to sort of like step in. That's why I suggest highly this shifting of I'll do Monday, Wednesday, you do Tuesday, Thursday, or I'll do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you do Thursday, or I'll do Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, you do Friday, or whatever it is, but just start asking for help. And it's okay because you're not, I like to think all of us are superhumans, but you can't make it happen unless Shelly asks her husband to make dinner, or unless Mark says, hey, I got the kids, you make dinner. It doesn't have to be a recipe. It just has to be your individual conversation and your connection with your spouse or partner about how you're going to co-parent all these responsibilities.
All right, so now what do we do with all of this? We've all been mired in commiserating for the last 45 minutes, and now let's talk about how to get through it. So I'm sure many of us have found and experienced moments of unexpected joy during this time. Personally, we were relatively new to our neighborhood when everything shut down, and we got to know our neighbors really, really well during this time because everybody was trying to just get outside as much as possible and maintain distance, but you would go for a walk and you'd start chatting with people and you would get to know everybody. So that was a really nice, unexpected upside for us. I'm sure other people have had experiences where they've had opportunities to spend more time with their kids that they wouldn't have had at other points. And I also can completely understand if the idea of spending more time with your kids right now is not desirable at all, because it's been a lot. So, but there are things that you want to try to embrace whenever there's an opportunity for joy, especially now. So, a lot of people are getting outside, exploring nature more than they have before. Game nights I think, are increasing in popularity again. Hey, everybody's got Amazon boxes piling up because, 6 months ago we couldn't go shopping. You can make really cool forts. And just getting silly.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Like, I think about some of the games I played when I was a kid. Like, I played marbles outside. I played kick the can. My parents used to ring a dinner bell when it was time to come back inside. Like, there's actually some upside of being in this situation because everybody has permission to be home. Like, you have permission.
Yeah,
You have
exactly.
universal permission. Right now, it's just a suggestion. At some point, it might become a mandatory thing. And the only question is, how can you take advantage of that and say, wow, you mean it's okay if I'm not shuttling to soccer, then hockey, then then tutor, then Kumon, then It's like, oh, wow, you mean I can go outside and like take an hour and go fishing or dig for worms or build a fort or, teach my kids how to play marbles and all. Maybe I'll get out Mousetrap because I played that. Maybe, maybe we'll make Monopoly a big time thing in our family. Like it's permission. That's the thing. That's the word that comes to mind so much for me is you have permission to play. You have permission and you're actually being kind of forced into it. So you should take advantage of that for sure.
Yeah, along those lines, I've had, both with my own kids, but also friends' kids and, some of the kids that I've worked with in therapy, their parents have talked about how this time has, I've jokingly, half jokingly referred to one of my kids as becoming feral because he would just go outside and explore in the woods near our house and come back covered in mud. And he said, yeah, we were trying to catch frogs and we were exploring this and we made a whole castle and a kingdom in the woods over here on this fallen tree. And those are experiences that if they were had they been in summer camp all day, they wouldn't have had because they would have been scheduled and they would have been shuttling from place to place. So that's been a real interesting experience. And I've heard from other people that they've had similar experiences with their own kids and how, it was interesting. A lot of people would walk by and they'd see the kids outside and they'd say, this was what our childhood was like.
Yeah. So
there is this sort of hearkening back to that. And I think that it's been really nice for a lot of kids. So embracing the chaos.
Yeah, lighten up, Mambo.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, do because we say it as a catchphrase. Right. But seriously, look at this bedroom. It's a mess. There's clothes everywhere. She's on the phone. She's, so
right.
what? How important really is order right now? Like it's important to have structure and expectations, but it's also okay to lighten up.
Mm-hmm.
And
typically at this point, if we were in person, we would sort of ask for, like how many people can relate to this photo and, typically I would imagine that, at least a few hands would go up. I certainly can. You saw my dining room table. If you could see the room around me right now, you'd say, oh yeah, okay, she's really in it and she's embracing it because, it's really all we can do. Sometimes you just have to surrender to what feels like lack of control.
Right. And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, not at all. Lowering our standards. Now, this, I think, is an especially challenging concept for many of the families that live in our area. Rebecca and I have done numerous talks together on the epidemic of anxiety, which was prevalent far before COVID came along. So it's this idea that our kids are really struggling with feeling like they have to achieve. And there's this sense, especially in the area where we live, there's a lot of pressure to perform, to achieve, to be successful, to get into a good college, to, you know, sustain this high level of achievement throughout your life. And there's no opportunity to just chill. And this really can be our opportunity to take a step back and say, you know what? We don't have the opportunity to be striving to succeed right now, because there's no way to do it. We can't be out on the soccer field showing what we can do. We can't be, you know, in person engaging in various, you know, high power situations, because we just simply are not permitted to be. So can we take that as a sign that maybe we can just kind of relax a little bit? What was interesting is that a lot of the therapy clients that I had prior to the pandemic, who were worried, had a lot of anxiety surrounding school performance and surrounding feeling like they just feel like they're being shuttled everywhere and they have no downtime, and feeling like they're, you know, they have some social anxiety. When I would check in with them once the pandemic hit, I would say, how are you doing? And they said, I'm great. All this pressure's off.
Yes.
So, you know, I think there's something to be gleaned from that. That's
no, and
important
I'm going to jump
recognize.
on that with Lindsay, because, you know, as a parent and family coach, you would think that a lot of my work would get more escalated, and like people would be like banging down my door. And in fact, in many ways, I've had like less families banging on my door, partially because they've learned how to embrace a lot of the things that I've taught them, but more importantly, the pressure is off. Like when the pressure comes off, you start to go, oh, I can take a deep breath, and I can just like sit here. You mean I can sit here and like play a game with my kid, and that's enough? So what happens is that the scaffolding of academic performance and where you go to college and getting ahead and getting a good job and making a lot of money, all of that stuff is all very important. I'm never going to say that it's not. But I'm also going to say, if it's a hollow shell, it's not going to mean as much. So you have to make sure that you can also feed and sort of like care about the internal, social, emotional, mental well-being of yourself and of your family. And now the universe has come in and said, here's your chance. I made it impossible for you to do XYZ thing. Can you now turn inwards? Can you now say, hey, we're gonna play cards and learn how to do this or that, or we're gonna go outside and go for a hike, or we're gonna get a pet, or, you know, whatever it is, instead of here's another 12 math sheets for you to learn. Mm-hmm. Like it's an opportunity for us to turn back to that social emotional well-being. Emotional intelligence is just as important as your IQ, your EQ and your IQ. They have to be balanced. If you have a super strong IQ and no, like really low EQ, it's going to be challenging. If you have a super high EQ and a low IQ, it's going to be challenging. So you really want to try and balance as much as you can, pay attention to both. And I don't think we always get to do both because we're so driven to succeed, which is not a bad quality. It's just, this is an opportunity to also be driven to think about your emotional intelligence. Yeah. Important.
All right, so we're in this for the long haul, as we said before. So now we need to figure out self-care. And this is most important for us as parents, finding time for ourselves. So, you know, that can be going out for walks on your own as a family, getting time just by yourself, finding your village. You know, this is how many of us are interacting now. You know, here we are doing it currently in the moment. You know, but this is how people are connecting, is staying in touch over Zoom. And you know, this has been a gift for a lot of us. I mean, personally, it has been essential for my mental health to be able to connect with my friends in this way. So, and then, I put this one in because this spoke to me. There have been numerous times I have very loud children and very sensitive ears. And there have been many times where I will walk around the kitchen with my earphones in just to help mute the noise. And for me, that's self-care because it helps me feel like I'm not going to lose my cool while dealing with all of the stuff going around me. So
and I think that's I think that's such an important illustration because, the truth is a lot of the times what happens is that we want to be our best selves, but you know how on the airplane, and I say this all the time, every time we talk, I bring this up, but if you're in the airplane, not that any of us have been lately, but if you're in the airplane, they always say in the case of a loss of cabin pressure, put on your own oxygen mask before you assist others, because you can't do it if you don't have your own oxygen flowing. But as parents, we're hot-wired to say, no, I have to make sure Billy's safe, or Bobby's doing this. And, oh, Jill doesn't have a play date. And what am I going to do about Mary? She's falling behind. And then the mother load and the mental load and all this stuff together. And it's just suddenly you're not getting any oxygen. As parents, one of our most important jobs, it's always to be loving, right? And to be attached to our kids and to be unconditionally loving to a certain extent. But at the same time, we really have to be older, stronger, and wiser. And we can't be older, stronger, and wiser if we don't have any oxygen going for ourselves. So give yourself permission. I can't deal with the yelling. I'm wearing my earbuds. I can't deal with this request right now. I'll be right back. I'm going to the bathroom. Go to the bathroom. Our kids do it at school. Take a break. Figure it out. And the most important thing you can do of all of this, I think, just from a pragmatics point of view, we were talking to Mark about this earlier, our lone dad here, is make it in the schedule. Mark goes on a bike ride every Wednesday. Every Wednesday he does the bike ride. His wife knows Dad's going on this bike ride every Wednesday from dun to duh. Now, if there's an emergency, obviously that's different, but he's really committed to that. And I think that as moms and dads, we need to also have to say, hey, Tuesday morning, I'm doing yoga, or Wednesday, I'm going to, for a walk, or I've got my Thursday, I need to walk on the beach thing. Don't just say it. That's what we mean by do it. Put it in the schedule. If it's not in the schedule, you're not going to do it. You're not. You on Sunday night, you say, tomorrow I'll get up and I'll go for a walk. And then the day goes by and it's not in your schedule, so you don't do it. That's where structure and schedule is really important. You have to make time for yourself. And if you don't, you're cheating. You're not cheating yourself. I mean, you are. You're cheating your kids. You're cheating your health. If you aren't taking care of yourself, maybe that will motivate us, to kind of say, oh, I have to do this or I'm not going to be available. Just like on the airplane. If I don't put it on first, I'm not going to be able to assist them. You have to take that literally and not just as a suggestion.
Yeah. So finding your village.
Strongly about it or anything.
What's that?
Not that I feel strongly about that or anything.
No, I totally agree with that. So finding your village, as we talked about, that's so essential. And it can be your neighbors, it can be your friends from college, it can be, the moms on your kids' old soccer team, just anyone that you feel you can commiserate with. I have spent most of the past 8 months on a text thread with Rebecca and a few other coworkers, just commiserating with each other about all of this chaos. And it has been a godsend. It is so essential to have other people whom you can vent to, or with whom you can just commiserate or glean inspiration, as we're talking about. So, it's really important to have that network. You should not be doing this alone, even if you are by yourself. And there's been a lot of talk about that term social distancing and how erroneous it is, because it shouldn't be social, it should be physical. And there's a big difference with those two things. and fostering a sense of community. That's where you want to be, feeling like you can connect with others, and you know, being able to understand, you know, do things for other people, you know, seek out supports where you need them and find out where other people might need supports that you can provide. That can be really, really helpful for mental health, is feeling as though you're doing something to make a difference for others.
And whatever your community is, maybe it's, you know,
Right.
going to the pet shelter and, you know, walking dogs for an hour. Maybe it's something that has nothing to do with any, you know, like just don't hesitate to find whatever it is that makes you feel happy. A lot of us are binging. Maybe you're going to binge on something, and like, not that I would encourage you to binge, you know, ad nauseum, but you could say, I'm going to spend an hour binging every day, and I'm going to feel good about that. Like, there's no rhyme or reason is the point. It's whatever works for you personally.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other thing that I think is important is that this is a really, as we talked about before, it's a traumatizing time. And it's important to process the fact that we've lost a lot of things that, you know, experiences that should bring us joy, and you know, traditions that we may have missed out on because of not being permitted to do things. You know, I mean, drive-by high school graduations don't really fit the bill, and
Or birthday parties.
Right. So, you know, these are things that, you know, it's okay to cry over these things, and to understand that there's grief to be experienced through this. I think so much of this time has been, no, we're fine. We can put on a brave face. We have to look okay for the kids, and we have to make sure that they're okay. And, you know, if we're not acknowledging that, like, yeah, this really sucks, that you know, you're not going to school full time, or that you're, you know, that you have to wear a mask everywhere, and that we have to do these things, and that we can't have the birthday party that we wanted to have, or we can't, you know, we can't mourn a death the way that we would traditionally. We can't celebrate new life the way that we would traditionally. You know, there's a lot of loss here, and I think it's important to say, yeah, this is hard. So,
and I just want to jump in really quickly. I know we're almost out of time, but we have a question from the chat room.
Yeah.
Asking about, you know, what to do with teenagers that have academics under control, but everything else is difficult: eating issues, family dinners, household chores, personal hygiene, walking the dog, etc. What I would say is, like, taking a page from Ross Green, who does a lot of work around this kind of topic, is you have to think about it as plan A and plan B. Like, plan A is the stuff that's really important. You know, what are the high priorities? Plan B are the things that, well, you know, they're important, but they're not, you know, going to stop the world if I don't get them done. So I would encourage you to make a list of, it's really important to me that my kid takes a shower every day. That's an unbreakable rule, as opposed to something that would be plan B, which would be like, well, you know, so they, you know, they come and, like, they'll dust for me, or they'll do some chore, or they'll take the dog for a walk or something. Maybe that's a plan B. So every family, and I encourage spouses to sit down and say, these are my unbreakable rules. They're all plan A. You have to come to dinner. You have to take a shower. You have to eat dinner. You have to, you know, you have to brush your teeth, like whatever your plan A's are. And then your plan B's are, these are things I'd really like you to do. And if you can't do them right now, I can take a little bit of a pass, but not forever. And that's primarily because we're shifting into this new normal. So as we get, you know, if this continues to go on, those plan Bs can shift over to plan A, but don't overload a teenager with a lot of plan A, plan B stuff together. Like, just kind of separate it out. This is okay, this is not okay, and why. And both of us can talk to you a lot offline, separately, about how to put together some sort of behavior plan that would help understand all of this. So we should definitely, keep that in mind.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And
take the time to process that loss, because I agree with Lindsay, like Thanksgiving could be different.
Yeah.
Halloween was different, right?
Yep.
But so how do you find the silver lining?
Right.
Look for the silver lining. I love this slide that we have here. Linz, talk about this. That's my favorite.
Oh,
Everyone's
if
dressed.
if everybody's dressing to match their walls, give us a call. No. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
And or if it's like, are the parents dressing in pink because the kids insisting they do?
Right.
If your kids are having to take over your entire dining room table and you no longer have control over any of that, if you're constantly arguing and you can't find the silver lining, if you can't find the golden ticket, that's a time to call us and ask for help. We have a lot of professionals here at Sasko River Center who can help you out. And it doesn't have to be like a big, full-time, year-long commitment. It can just be like, hey, I need some guidance. I need some help here. And it's important to reach out to us and to ask for some suggestions and thoughts. And we can certainly guide you in answering those questions.
Hey, Rebecca, real quick. So I think the pandemic is taking a toll on my marriage, unfortunately. But I think my husband, I think he's at some level depressed. But how do I make him aware of that and like reach out for help? Like how do I make someone?
I think it starts with validation. I think you have to just say something like, hey, sweetheart, I can see some real sadness in you. You don't have to say depressed. I can see some real sadness with you, and I'm really interested in supporting you and being on your team. So here are some resources and some ideas. And by far, for sure, reach out to us. Like just email us. You can find Lindsay and I both on the Sasko River website. Just email and say, hey, can you chat? And we'll find a time to talk to you and sort of set you up with some suggestions. I think our last slide is this, some resources, places that you can go. I'm a huge fan of Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson. If you are looking for parenting advice, their latest book, The Power of Showing Up, is about, do your children feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure? I mean, that's more important than anything else. Notice how they don't say educated, smart,
school,
in sports.
Right.
They socially connected. They say safe, seen, soothed, and secure. That's your job as a parent. That's your job. You have these children. You have to make sure that they're feeling that way. And there's a couple of other links there that we've included. I know that I think Mark talked about having the slides available in some way, but those are great articles just about trying to find a way to give yourself permission to slow down and to listen and to be available to your kids and most importantly to yourself. So important to be available to yourself. Like put yourself first for a little while every day, if nothing else, because I go back to my colleague and my good friend here, Lindsay, who, if you weren't here at the beginning of the call, 36 hours ago, had an emergency surgery at a hospital, and here she is, like, still moving through, resilient,
marginally coherent, I hope,
but resilient and committed, and getting up every day and saying, I have to keep going. When you feel like you're going to get up in the morning and say, I don't want to keep going, I'm done with this, I'm not doing it anymore, give us a call. Give us a call. We're both mommies, we're both parents, we understand, we've been there, we no one's perfect, but we're here to help you, and we want to help you. And there's a huge team of people here at Sasko River Center that can help you. We have psychologists, psychiatrists, occupational therapists, learning centers, every area you can think of, we've got a resource here for you. So don't hesitate to reach out to us and let us know what you need. There's no harm in asking. You can make decisions from there, but we're available and we're around.
I just want to just to speak to. I know we're like going over time here, but I just want to point out the question about teenagers that was in the chat that Rebecca spoke to. I just want to add to that a little bit and just talk about a teenager's experience is one of trying to establish independence, and that's a developmental phase. So their experience of going through this pandemic and being stuck at home and not having as many opportunities to be out and be social and be having those interactions in their school hallways because they have to stay in their pod or they have to stay in their group and only in this section. They can only walk in this direction in this hallway and they can only move this way to get to this class. That's a lot of it is an upheaval. So all of those ingrained networks for them and supports for them are not in place right now. And a lot of that fallout is occurring at home. So I think you know, they're struggling a lot with that. You know, they can get the schoolwork done, but then the feelings of like, I can't hang out with my friends and I can't go and like couldn't go to that Halloween party that we had planned before that we always do every year because of the stupid pandemic. And I can't go and like be in a car with my friends driving around because we're not supposed to be that close together because they're not in my pod and I'm not supposed to be interacting with them. And oh, there's another case. So now I'm quarantined for 2 weeks and now I can't go to school and I'm stuck in front of this computer trying to learn. You know, there's this feeling of, I think, like, F this. So, you know, acknowledging that this is really hard for them. And as much as, you know, as parents, we might be saying like, oh, they're finally around and we can hang out with them. It's really hard for them to say like, yay, I get to hang out with my parents now more than I ever wanted to. Yeah. So, you know, understanding their perspective and that it's completely developmentally appropriate and expected for them to want to separate and individuate from their parents. You know, and just having that experience can very likely contribute to some of the, you know, that resistance to doing things around the house, because typically they wouldn't be around the house as much as they are now.
Right.
So I just think it's a point that is important to bear in mind. And if you feel like it's something that's really getting in the way, you know, we say like the time to seek help is when you feel like it's interfering with day-to-day functioning. You know, that's when you want to give a call, you know, and as Rebecca said, we are here and I feel like we're saying operators are standing by, but you know, we have a really talented staff.
But I think Lindsay's point so on point. You know, it's every age is developmentally different.
Yeah.
And so, you know, what might seem to you like they're shutting me down, they're not doing this or that, might be actually what they're supposed to be doing. Right. And you might just need some affirmation of that. You just might need somebody, a professional, to kind of say, oh, yeah, that's what they're supposed to do. And or, well, maybe not so much. Maybe it's a little too far. The balance there is getting tipped. So, yeah, for sure. So, Lindsay, thank you so much for being on the recovery end of a surgery.
I apologize if I'm loopy.
Oh, you're fantastic. Amazing mommy that you are. So awesome.
Can you see why Rebecca's in my village?
Well,
constant
same,
support.
Right back at you. And Mark, thank you so much for all of your contributions as our soul dad. It would be interesting if the people on that are still on, if you were to like write back to us and or Mark or Sasko River or whatever, and just let us know if you feel like dads could use some sort of like session like this. We would love to set something up for, you know, dads only, you know, could be in the evening or something like that. There are lots of options available. So thanks so much for coming and for staying for so long.
We can stay on for a few minutes if there's any like questions that anybody else has.
If you got to go. If you want to stay, stay here. So
screen share.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Well, Thank you both. That was, I've done a few of these, and personally, that was the most interesting to me. It was very nice
Oh,
to be
cool.
validated. I'm not a mom, obviously, not yet.
You're
But
just as
you
important.
know, it made me feel validated too, because I like I said before, I'm a helpful guy, I'm an involved guy, but I don't have that mantle of worry that Melissa has. That you know, I don't know if I would want it, but it certainly I appreciate that she does have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that that's, you know, the first step in terms of, you know, creating a more egalitarian approach is understanding like, wow, mom is holding on to a lot, you know,